Well, good afternoon here on the East Coast and good morning out west. My name is Dwayne Brown with NASA Headquarters Office of Communications. We are coming to you live from the iconic Newseum here in the nation's capital. Happy summer solstice, the official first day of summer, and what a summer it's going to be. Today we have two briefings to talk about an event 99 years in the making, the August 21st total solar eclipse across America. Now, in these briefings, we'll talk about and you'll hear about safety in viewing the eclipse, travel, and of course, the science. The first briefing, through the eyes of NASA, you will hear the unprecedented assets from America's space program. Spacecraft, airplanes, balloons, and a little bit of everything in between. Also, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration have their own unique assets. You'll hear about those. Coming back down to Earth, directly affecting the public, obviously, the parks. There will be extraordinary record numbers of crowds at our national parks. You're going to hear about to be better prepared. And of course, to get to those parks and the festivals and the museums and a whole plethora of activities across the country, the Transportation Department will talk about the highways and byways so you can be better prepared. We'll then have a brief intermission after our first briefing concludes. And don't change that dial, because during the intermission, we're going to have safety videos and a lot of other important information for you to be better prepared and thinking even more about the the August 21st event. Then our second briefing will be about the science. Scientists have been preparing for this extraordinary event for years. You're going to hear about what they're doing, their activities, and why you, the public, should care, because we're probably going to see a lot of new folks going into the scientific field after the August event. And of course, during both briefings, we'll have question and answer starting here at the Newseum and then on the phone lines and social media. You're going to hear several news sites or websites. For the NASA, everything about the eclipse through A through Z, and you may want to commit these to memory, eclipse2017.nasa.gov. There will be lots of interactive information there, products, and if it's not there, well, we'll get it up there. You let us know. And then on the August 21st date, nasa.gov/eclipse live, the NASA television broadcast with some bells and whistles, the International Space Station, images through the eyes of NASA, and the Eclipse Live also will have Spanish content. So make sure that you tune in for that and much, much more. Social media, hashtag Eclipse 2017. There are going to be record numbers of social media. Follow us on that hashtag and also on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, all of those types of social media platforms. Now, before I introduce you to our panel, something special has already happened. The United States Postal Service dedicated the total eclipse of the sun forever stamp. This first of its kind stamp is based on a photograph taken by retired NASA astrophysicist Fred Espenak. The image shows a total solar eclipse seen from Libya in 2006. The really cool thing about this is that it transforms into the moon from the heat of a finger. And once it cools, the eclipse image returns. And the back of the stamp pane shows a map of the path of totality from coast to coast. We have Postal Service representatives here in our front row for the media and social media to ask questions. If we don't have time here, they certainly will be available afterwards. These stamps are great collectibles. You can buy them here at the Newseum and at the post office near you and online at usps.com/shop. Ladies and gentlemen, they have done an incredible job, as they always do, but they've outdone themselves. Can we give them a round of applause for the stamp? Okay, before we get started, let me introduce you to our first panel. Thomas Abukin, Associate Administrator of NASA's Science Mission Directorate at the agency's headquarters in Washington. Vanessa Griffin, Director of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Office of Satellite and Product Operations, Suitland, Maryland. The gentleman in an awesomely cool suit and uniform there, Brian Kallstrom, Deputy Associate Director of the Natural Resource Steward and Science at the National Park Service in Washington, and Martin Knopp, Associate Administrator of the Office of Operations in the Federal Highway Administration in the U.S. Department of Transportation in Washington. So, Thomas, through the eyes of NASA, over to you.
Thanks so much, Dwayne. You know, during our busy lives, sometimes we forget that we're sitting on a planet that's turning on its axis, with a celestial body right next to it that was ripped out of the planet really late in its formation, our moon. And everything is bathed in the gases and the fields of our star, the sun. The most important star for us, because it gives us life. It is supporting everything we do, but it's also the Rosetta Stone of all stars. What we learn about stars, we first learn here at the sun. So the eclipse is important because these bodies come into alignment in a cosmic moment that we're all being part of. And see, these cosmic moments when nature speaks to us in an emotional way sometimes come loud, like thunderstorms, storms, like hurricanes, earthquakes, but this one will be silent. All of a sudden, day will turn into night and back again, and the world around us, animals, will react to it. This emotion is really important. You should talk to anybody who has seen such an eclipse. And you know, for me, the story that I remember is my grandma, who told me that story of her experience. She's not a scientist whatsoever, about experiencing that eclipse and how she was feeling how important that moment was. She talked about birds, about animals around. And I really hope that all of us, all of you who are watching this, will in fact go enjoy this eclipse, because it's important, just for that reason. But it's also about science. Eclipses have been important in finding discoveries that really have changed our lives. It's an eclipse in 1868 that for the first time provided images of an emission we had never seen, radiation we didn't understand. And just because we didn't know what it was, they called it helium. Helium, of course, is a gas that's really abundant around here. It's in our balloons that rise to the sky on our birthdays or whatever. So helium was discovered there. In 1919, an observation of the eclipse by Eddington provided the first proof of general relativity, that light actually bends in the gravitational well of the sun, and provided that first test of this very pivotal theory. Well, science is what it's all about here for us at NASA, and it's, first of all, heliophysics. It's a science of the sun and its environment, how these plasmas, these gases interact with our planets. But it's also about astrophysics, like I just said, planetary sciences, such as at the moon and planets elsewhere, and earth science, all of which will be involved in this important spectacles. So this eclipse will be really important for us because it will be providing unprecedented vantage points of NASA assets in space, in the air, and on the ground. And for that, please start the movie. So first of all, we'll have 11 spacecraft that are flying, 2 of them with our sister agency, NOAA. And the spacecraft, a bunch of them, as shown here, are initially looking at the sun. They're looking at what we call the corona, which is the atmosphere of the sun. Guess why it's called corona? Because of an eclipse observation. It's like a crown around the moon. And these observations will look at all colors from X-ray all the way to visible and beyond. There's one spacecraft at the moon. It's looking both at the moon but also along the shadow at the Earth and looking at that unique vantage point. And then, of course, we have a whole series of spacecraft in orbit around Earth, looking at both the incoming radiation and the radiation that's coming back from Earth, really providing us a unique experiment of how solar radiation interacts with the Earth atmosphere. We're also making observations in air with these aircraft, and I don't want to forget the astronauts who will look out the window and really look at this spectacle from up there. On the ground, the same kind of excitement will occur because of the fact that we have professional astronomers, but also citizen astronomers, individuals that go out there and together look at this eclipse and provide unique science that will come together and really help us understand new things about the sun, new things about the Earth, and how they interact in this unique eclipse, this unique opportunity. Before I close off, I want to remind ourselves that it's really not good for your eyes to look at the sun. It's not good to look at the sun when the sun is just in the sky, but it's also not good if only half or 3/4 of the sun are covered. The sun is way too bright for your eyes. So be safe. Do enjoy it, but be safe. The only time it's really okay to look at the sun is when it's entirely covered by the noon for those 2 minutes or so that are out there. So what I want to do is just tell you a story that really moved me, and it's a story that was actually made possible by an individual in the audience here. Cass Runyan from the College of Charleston is sitting in the audience, and it's a map that is making the eclipse accessible to those of our friends and colleagues who are visually impaired or blind. And so what this provides is a map that these individuals can feel and really get the geometry both of this shadow across the country, but also of the corona and the entire lineup of the sun and the moon. So I'm just so excited that also in this case, our friends that do not see the light of the sun can really be part of that enormous experience. Of course, they will also hear, they were going to feel, but they can also touch it here. But what I'm going to turn it over now to you, Vanessa, and tell us about NOAA and the assets that you have.
Thank you, Tommy. First, I want to say that your comment about the emotion of an eclipse is really dear to me as well. I think I saw my first and only eclipse back in '79 as an undergraduate student. And that experience helped me formulate in my own mind that idea that I wanted to have a career in science. That's the kind of thing that something as simple as a total solar eclipse or a partial eclipse can really inspire in our students around the country. But anyway, so as you heard already, this is a 99-year event. It's been 99 years since a total solar eclipse crossed the entire U.S. from the west coast to the east coast. And NOAA is very excited to be able to help you experience that with providing views from our satellites of the eclipse as it's happening. Of course, there's 2 factors involved in whether you will see this eclipse. One, the geography of where you live. Are you in the band where the total solar eclipse will be occurring? Or will you be in the remainder of the United States, which will have partial viewing of an eclipse? And of course, the other factor is whether there'll be clear weather for you to experience the view. So we'll talk about that. You may not be aware, but NOAA owns and operates all of the nation's weather satellites, a series of very high resolution, very capable satellites that allow us to view the eclipse from different perspectives. And we'll be doing that on August 21st. Can I have my first graphic, please? This is a graphic that shows all of NOAA's satellites and the very orbits around the Earth that they are in currently. We have 2 particular ones I want to talk about. One is our Discover satellite, which is outside the Earth's orbit. Actually, it's outside the lunar orbit as well. So it has a camera on board, a NASA camera Epic, that looks back at the Earth. And with that image, we'll be able to actually capture images of the moon moving across the continent as the eclipse occurs. We also have instruments on board that, of course, look at the sun and monitor the solar output, the space weather, as we call it, and basically being our sentinel, constantly looking at the sun, making us aware of what's coming at us from the solar environment. And, of course, we'll learn more about that. You'll hear more about that in the science discussion later. Our other satellite, our newest next-generation GO-16 satellite, you may have heard your local meteorologists around the country raving about this new satellite that we have. It provides us just an incredible new capability. We have probably the most advanced instrument ever developed for monitoring the weather on the Earth. It's currently in testing. It launched in November, and it's going through a series of tests. We actually won't be moving it into operations until next November. But in the meantime, we're going to use its capability to monitor the eclipse as it occurs. For instance, we're developing our scanning strategy now, but we hope to have 30-second images of the lunar shadow on the Earth as it moves across the continent from the GOES-16 satellite. But GOES-16 is also armed with a new instrument, a very high-resolution, high-powered camera that looks at the sun. This camera will be looking at the sun during the eclipse, and we do expect to see effects from the eclipse in the image, be able to see the moon's image in the image. And of course, this camera looks at the sun constantly to monitor the sun's activities and what's happening as we go. We have a number of other satellites, our polar orbiting satellites, including SUMI MPP, NOAA 15, NOAA 18, and NOAA 19, as well as our partner satellites from Europe. Because these are polar orbiting satellites, many of them will actually be orbiting the Earth and crossing over the United States during the eclipse period. And we'll get images again of the lunar shadow in those images. So it's going to be fascinating. We can't wait to see the data. Of course, the most important thing, if I'll bring up my next graphic, please, the most important thing is what will the weather be? So this image, this graphic was produced by NOAA's National Center for Environmental Information. And it shows that as the eclipse moves west to east across the United States, there's an increasing likelihood of cloudiness in the areas of where you'll be able to view the eclipse. This is due to many factors. For instance, if you look at the western coast of Oregon and the southeastern states, you see areas, again, that'll have a higher likelihood of cloudiness because of the humidity that they have on average. Now, this is taken from historical data. This is not a forecast. It's just the historical average, the percentage of cloud cover that you can experience or expect based on history on August 21st in the afternoon. There are many other factors also that involve your ability to see the eclipse. One is your geography, the terrain. Are there mountains, other things that would limit your exposure time, your view time, and also fog and other events that could happen. And of course, this is late summer. It's late August, and it's mid-afternoon. And we know what that means. That means a chance of showers and thunderstorms. And so again, as you look at this graphic, you see the eastern half of the United States is much darker, again, because of the presence over time on that day of thunderstorms and showers in the afternoon. So we certainly hope you have clear skies, but we wanted to let you be aware of what you could expect if you're planning to travel and you want to know where to go. NASA's very excited about the eclipse, very excited, if we bring up my next graphic, about helping you get information that you want. So we have a series of websites we've put together that show NOAA's data, not NASA, NOAA's data. And of course, our NCEI data sites is other things. We hope you have clear skies. We hope the weather's great. We hope you have great viewing of the eclipse. We're excited about it. And I know that many of you will be traveling to try to find locations where you can best view the event. And many of those will be in the national park. So I'll hand it over to Brian to talk about the national parks.
Thank you, Vanessa. Yes, the eclipse is a very significant event for the National Park Service, and we hope many of you will come and enjoy it in your national parks. It's a special day for everyone. As a couple of experiences have been shared, this is your opportunity to create your experience related to the eclipse so that you can hopefully one day perhaps share it with your family or even your grandkids. So where can you see it in the national parks? Well, it just so happens that 20 of the national parks are exactly in the area of totality, and 9 of the national trails bisect the path as well. Going from west to east, the first park that will experience the eclipse in totality is John Day Fossil Beds, and it'll wrap up several hours later at Fort Sumter in South Carolina. Now, all the parks in the lower 48, because they are in a lot of other places as well, will experience the eclipse at some level. Check with the local parks website to determine exactly what that's going to be. Now, what's happening in the national parks related to the eclipse? Well, a lot of specific activities are happening. We're trying to help people to learn and experience more about the parks as quickly as they can. And the community, we're working and partnering with a lot of communities, including NASA, Harvard, the Smithsonian, and the Planetary Society. And the Planetary Society is helping us to host a special event at Homestead National Monument in Nebraska that is going to be having a 3-day festival all around the eclipse. Next graphic, please. So to plan your visit, for this once-in-a-lifetime event, make sure to plan ahead. Make sure to plan to experience the eclipse in a national park. Like you would any other visit to the national park. Visit the website. That's your best place to get started. Make sure you bring food, expect crowds, be patient. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event for everybody, and we want you all to have an amazing experience while you're there. So what can people take part in? Well, you can stay in the parks, next slide please, after the eclipse to see spectacular night skies. You can join other citizen scientists and observe the behavior of plants and animals during that solar eclipse. And like Thomas mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that when you're doing so, you're doing it as safely as possible, both during the event and when you get there. And we know you're going to be traveling on a lot of roads and federal highways, and to talk to us specifically about that is Martin.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, you know, the audience may not normally put heavenly bodies, the moon, the sun, you know, eclipses with, why is this friendly neighborhood Federal Highway Administration person talking? and yet, I'm here representing the people that are working to make sure that you get there safe, to fully enjoy it, and that's what we're after. We want the drivers and their families to be prepared and to be safe while they're out there enjoying this event. Because of the scientists, we know that 14 states are going to be in the direct path of the total eclipse. Now, across the country, that is a lot of land to cover. And what we understand is it represents about 200 million people that are within 1 day's drive of getting to within the direct path. So that is a lot of people with potential to be out on the roads. And we want them to get out there, enjoy this experience, but we need them to do it safely. There may be more people on the roads than are normally expected or expected out there on the roads. There may be more pedestrians who are out looking to get good sights to be able to view it, and bicyclists who are enjoying the summertime weather. So if we pull up the first graphic, we show a map of the interstates that are in the path of the total eclipse. And these are just interstates. The map's too small to be able to put on all the other highway routes and the local county roads and the city streets that are in the path as well. There's approximately 20 interstates that are in the direct path, and on an average day, those interstates serve about 2 million drivers. That's a lot, and that is just, again, the interstates, not the highways and the city streets and the others. So we don't really know exactly how many might be out there driving around to get in good position for this, but we know that there will likely be several million. The good thing is, 14 states, well, their state departments of transportation are already planning. They're already coordinating with local governments, with law enforcement, with emergency responders. So they are working to help make sure that the governments and the roads are as prepared for the people to handle that as possible. In fact, we have Stephen Lovrins here from the National Operations Center of Excellence. He's going to be here to help with any questions that you may have regarding the states and preparedness. The Center of Excellence helps provide best practices for state and locals to help make sure they're ready for things like this. Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, we encourage travelers. We want them to be excited about this, but be prepared. It's not a time to just show up and on the spur of a moment, drive for a few minutes with your head out the window looking up at the sky. It's not a time to just pull over, you know, and be on the side of the road. If we could pull up our next graphic, it's a web page that we've put together in Federal Highways that provides relevant information about the total eclipse. It gives you links to the 14 state DOTs and the information that they're providing. It has links to the National Center of Excellence for Operations. We've got links to the NASA sites, and so we try to make it as easy as possible for people that are looking for good information to be able to find it. Also, it's not just the normal traveling public. Freight, companies that move our goods and products that we need and enjoy, they already have to be very safety conscious for cars that dart in front of the trucks or finding limited parking spaces for tractor trailers, or how they make sure they meet their hours of service. Well, they need to be preparing as well. that favorite spots they may have for knowing where to find that little secret parking space along the way, others may know about that as well. So whether it's the public or the truckers, plan ahead. One thing to think about is this is occurring in August, vacation time. So rush hour traffic may be a little slower than normal because in these areas where there's places that have more people that are coming to enjoy this. August is also, probably if I asked the audience, they would say construction season, you know, for helping to take care of the roads. And we need to do that while keeping live traffic going. Most of the state DOTs are already preparing to have their work zones not be active during the eclipse to make it as safe as possible. But you will still see traffic devices like barrels or changeable message boards that will help advise the public about what to expect for any potential construction hazards. But work zones are tough enough to keep everyone alert and engaged for it. So you may be coming upon speed limit reductions, lanes that are closed, lanes that are narrowed or moved. So the things that you see normally, we're trying to mitigate that as much as possible. If we pull up the last graphic here, but what we need is always be alert and be conscientious drivers. Don't let this solar phenomenon eclipse good judgment. You know, there is a concern for distracted driving. We have that without the eclipse. The eclipse is certainly a wonderful thing that's going to capture our attention. We want to be as safe as possible. So if you get one message out of this is prepare in advance. Don't do it on the spur of the moment. We lose way too many lives on the highways already, and we want to make sure that this runs perfectly and people enjoy this event. A few tips, you can get them also on our website, but you heard me earlier, don't stop along the interstate. You know, don't drive with your head poking out of the window. Don't just pull over. You've got pedestrians and others that are out there. Be careful. If everyone is driving, staring up at the sky, and everyone on the side of the road is staring up at the sky, then who's looking out for each other? You know, we're looking at a wonderful event, but we need to take care of each other along the way. Turn your headlights on. Don't rely on automatic lights to come on. And as I said, watch out for pedestrians. Finally, as always, buckle up. Put the cell phone in the glove box. You don't need to be talking on the phone. I've gone 7 years without having a phone call while driving, and the first 2 weeks was maybe a little itchy, but after that, I haven't missed that at all. You know, so my advice, take back peace of mind that you want. Take back full control of your mind and attention from distractions. So make this a great event. Be safe, and on behalf of the Federal Highway Administration, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And if you're just joining us, we're coming to you live from the Newseum here in the nation's capital. And this is our first of 2 briefings to talk about the upcoming total solar eclipse across America on August 21. We are now going to transition into question and answers. We have a number of folks on the phone, social media, and of course, media here. Again, we have a second briefing coming up to get more deep dive and more specific on the science. This is about preparation and the assets to bring you a wealth of images and data, both before, during, and after the August eclipse. So what we'd like to do is see a hand, if you can wait for the mic, and give your name and affiliation, please.
Seth Borenstein, Associated Press, for Martin Kopp. You said most states are going to be putting work zones aside during the eclipse. What states have not responded yet or are not going to be doing that? And what time period are you talking? Because there are a lot of eclipse chasers who are going to, I mean, it's not the time of the eclipse, it's sort of the several hours beforehand. So that day, I think it's a Sunday, right? Or I mean, are you looking at the entire day of work-free zones for these places? What are the recommendations of the Highway Administration, and what states are not doing it?
Great question. Right at this point, we haven't gathered all the information to know which states, because they're still working on their plans. And you're right, they're looking at not just covering the 2 minutes plus of the eclipse, but to help make sure that the travelers that are going there on special events, whether it's over the weekend, I do need to clarify that they're not getting rid of their work zones. You know, it's hard to do when you've got different pieces of the infrastructure under work. What they're not going to do is have it active. So we're still working at getting accounting to understand what their needs are and which ones are doing that. That's why right now, at this point, be tied into the websites for those state DOTs. And they're not wanting to get in the way. They want to keep you safe and they want to keep you moving. So that's the information that we have at this point.
Okay, we have other answers, hands, and we'll provide answers. And also on social media, hashtag Eclipse 2017. And I see a hand here. Wait for the mic and name and affiliation, please.
Hi, Hanukkah Widering with Space.com. So I've heard rumors that this is going to be the most watched eclipse in history. I'm wondering if you agree with that and why or why not.
Okay, those assertions are always very hard to prove because we don't have really good numbers on any one of them. I think it's definitely one of the top candidates, if not the most watched eclipse. If you take all the vantage points, all the assets together, and all the channels we're going to put out, it's going to be hard to beat, frankly. I mean, it's kind of these kind of stories go in the billions right away. And so just with just the NASA network itself, and then there are all the other networks that are coming in, I think will be hard to beat. So my personal feeling is it will be the most watched, but I can't prove that scientifically.
We're going to go to the phone lines, but let's take one more question. Do we have here in the audience? If not, we will go to the phone lines. Up, Alan Boyle. Do we have Alan on the phone? Okay, let's see if we can do a little turn here. Yes, let's go social media. We're starting to hear there's a lot of chat on there. So I'm going to go to my colleague over at the social media desk, Jason Townsend. Jason, what's the crowd talking about across the country?
Thanks, Dwayne. There's definitely a lot of excitement out there, but some folks want to know a couple of things. First off, Twitter user B asks, where can we buy Eclipse glasses?
The Eclipse 2017.nasa.gov website has a number of pieces of contact information. There's also actually through the STEM activation programs at NASA, some of these classes have been distributed through libraries, through a series of organizations. But if you cannot find the answer around your neighborhood, do contact us over the website and we'll help you find it.
And let me also ask, it's my understanding that over 5,000 libraries across the country have the glasses. So across the country, your libraries, check those out. And as Thomas said, go to the websites. But check out your libraries, 5,000 across the country. One more, Jason?
Wonderful. Next question here comes from Facebook user Michael, who asks, when the eclipse happens, does the sun get cold?
So the eclipse is truly an event that is all about the vantage points. The sun, if I was in space and with the spacecraft looking at the sun outside of the Earth, there's absolutely no indication of the eclipse. So basically what happens, of course, the sun itself is the sun. Now what's happening though, if I'm on the ground and I basically feel the temperature of the sun on my skin because of the fact that the sun disappears and it's getting dark. Yes, it will feel like it's cool, but it's entirely a perception because of the shadow cone of the moon being right on top of us. So the sun will not know about the eclipse, but you will.
Okay, Jason, we're going to go to the phones and I'll come back to you. So let's go back to our phone lines. And I believe we have WTOP, Greg.
Hi, good afternoon. And thank you so much for this great event. I basically had two quick questions. For Department of Transportation, where do you expect the largest congregation of people to be, just so our listeners can be aware of that? And secondly, for NASA, if it is cloudy, based upon NOAA's predictions, where can people tune in to see the live coverage of the event? And thank you very much.
For the first part of that good question, we're taking that in. We know that Nashville is likely the largest metropolitan area that's in the direct path. So how much they have to travel, within Nashville or those that are trying to go to Nashville. There's also, though, some places that want to be out of the city lights and into the national parks and others where they can get a splendid view there. So I'm looking at Stephen Lovrance from the Center of Excellence. Do you have any additional information, Stephen?
No, I mean, I think that's about, thanks. That's about the same information that we have. I'm not sure if this is on, but yeah, I mean, pretty much anywhere along the path of totality is going to see a lot of people. I mean, the transportation agencies that we've been working with, you know, they're working with local businesses and hotels, and have found that a lot of places along the entire path, you know, hotels have been booked out for 2 years in advance. I mean, sold out for years in advance. And so I think pretty much anywhere you go, there's going to be a good bet that you're going to be facing some pretty significant crowds.
Thank you.
I want to answer the second question. I'll answer the first one, the first half, and then kick it over to Dwayne here. But first of all, with NASA, with all these vantage points, we will provide a non-stop view of the solar eclipse, kind of from the west to the east, through a variety of assets. We actually have, I'll tell you, I'm going to be in an airplane right off the coast of Oregon, and to really start this off, and as the shadow is really hitting the coast, we will then have balloons, we have aircraft, and we have, of course, ground-based and space-based assets that will make this available nonstop. Talk about NASA TV.
Well, again, if we can put up the websites, commit this to memory, ladies and gentlemen, across the country. NASA.gov/Eclipse Live. That will be where the NASA broadcast will be. We will have all types of other content, Spanish content, NASA.gov/Eclipse Live. Get that locked into memory. And again, if you want to go through Eclipse through A through Z, eclipse2017.nasa.gov, everything you need to know about it. But on August 21, NASA.gov/Eclipse Live for the program, live content, and if you want to see it through the eyes of NASA, Eclipse Live is the way to go. Next on our phone, Alan.
Yes, hi. Sorry about that mute button. I wanted to ask whether you really are prepared for the crowds. I can imagine people actually camping out on the side of the interstate or jamming up the roads, not only interstates but also local roads. Is the Department of Transportation getting out the word, and are there any particular things that are being done to anticipate what might be a big traffic jam?
You know, I'm trying not to imagine people out alongside the interstates as well, so hopefully that doesn't come to fruition. That's one reason why graciously we're happy to be here with the other panel members to help get the message out. The state DOTs are preparing public information campaigns beyond just posting things on a website, and they are going to be preparing for the areas that they can at least take the greatest priority for where they think people may be going. So we're trying to get the message out to everyone. It's important, as I said, that you don't just go on a spur of the moment, say, hey, let's drive up and take a look at this thing, pull over on the interstate. Right now, there is controlled access to the interstates, and the state DOTs are responsible for that, and they're working on plans to try to help make sure people are safe.
Okay, we're going to go back to social, but again, and I'm going to sound like a broken record for folks, NASA.gov/Eclipse Live, the NASA through the eyes of NASA show, but also the web content there. A lot of interactive activities. Go there. We have a video that will show all of the bells and whistles there, but commit the memory if you can, NASA.gov/Eclipse Live. Live television, internet, and everything else in between. Jason.
So this next question comes from Twitter user Joseph, who asks, what concerns or precautions should we take with very small children, maybe 3 and under, when viewing the eclipse?
Well, so my kids are no longer small, but I remember kind of looking at things like that. What I would be absolutely sure about is to either make sure that the type of eye protection that is there, is clearly on top of the eyes of the children, and really actually practice ahead of it, so the kids really get used to it, so they understand that's how it feels, and yeah, it's supposed to be dark, and you can practice with the sun out. The other thing also is that if you're out there for quite a while, let's say in in the west, the sun is really burning down on you. So be sure that your skin is protected, especially the skin of smaller children that, as you know, is so sensitive. And also be sure that you bring enough water and make sure you stay kind of healthy as you're out there and really take this in. So again, protect the eyes, really diligently practice it, protect your skin, and stay hydrated.
And I want to remind our viewers that at 2:30, we will have scientists that will be talking about many ways to be safe. They work with young kids of all ages. Stay tuned, watch out, and we'll have that question answered to complement Thomas's. So don't miss the scientists coming up. You'll be pretty amazed at some of the things and how you can protect, but also some creative ways to look at the eclipse safely. We're going to take one more social, and then we're going to go to the phone.
All right, this question comes from Twitter user Ben, who asks, how can watching the eclipse at different altitudes, especially in and on mountains, change the viewing experience?
What do you think, Park Ranger?
You'll be slightly closer. From a physics standpoint, I'm not sure that the cone of the moon through the shadow of the totality is going to be all that much difference with any elevation gain you might be able to achieve. That might be different in an airplane, perhaps. But in terms of what you could experience by going up or down a mountain within a park or other public lands, probably be pretty minimal. Is that a satisfactory answer from a scientific standpoint, Thomas?
Yeah, I was trying, I mean, as you know, like I'm totally faking it. I already told you that I've not experienced it myself. Growing up in the mountains, though, I think the one thing I would say is like, okay, so the geometry relative to the moon and relative to the sun, of course, will not significantly change. What will change is your perspective. So basically, what you will see standing up on that mountain, you'll see the shadow cone hitting the valley, and the valley, and what you see is a much broader perspective of the kind of impact that this transition has, just as opposed to being in a flat place, you'll see down and up, and I think that's just a unique thing for a guy who grew up on a mountain. That's where you want to be.
And Brian, you've got the cool uniform on, so whatever answer you give, it's pretty good. Okay, let's go back to the phones, and I believe we have the Washington Post. Trina Bell. Trina. Washington Post.
All right, the moment to unmute here. So I'm actually a freelancer who's writing with the Washington Post and other publications. So with this particular question, I'd like to chat really quick about crowd sizes. We have an awful lot of small towns across America that are all expecting 100,000 people or so. So when we're looking, it's my understanding that crowd sizes have been estimated off of the numbers of eclipse chasers and tourists for similar eclipses in the past. So what is a more realistic number, or is it realistic for each small town that's one county over from the other small town to all be expecting 100,000 people?
From the Federal Highway Administration's point of view, the state DOTs are working with the communities, especially, it's easier when we see communities that are saying, hey, we want to have a festival, we want to make it a long weekend. It's easier for state DOTs to be able to be planning with them. I think the big question is there's not unlimited number of people working at state DOTs, so they need to be able to know and predict where they need to put their people best stationed. For information, on the Federal Highway Administration's website, we do have information about how to put together planned special events, things that we can see coming in advance, and what are some good practices and checklists. In fact, one of my colleagues just retired from us, Lori Raydow. She's an expert in planned special events. She's here in the audience and help put together that information. And so that would be one source that I would say the communities for free can go to the Federal Highway Administration website and look up information about planned special events and use the information that's there to help find out what things they've thought about and what things they haven't.
Okay, we've got about 10 minutes. I'm going to come back here to the Newseum for questions, and then we'll go back to social and the phone. A reminder to our viewers, we're going to have a brief intermission. Don't change that station. Lots of interesting and important vital information on viewing the eclipse safely. and other types of things. And then 2:30, the scientists are coming. You don't want to miss that. And many of the questions that we're hearing that you want answered, save those for that 2:30 show. So any folks here in the studio audience, or do we go back to social? Jason.
All right, then. So user Veronica on Twitter is asking, can we see the eclipse in Europe at all, even just a bit?
In Europe?
New York.
Oh, New York.
Europe.
Oh, Europe.
Europe, no, I'm not aware. I do not believe that this eclipse is going to go through Europe.
No, I have to watch TV.
All right, then.
Okay, go ahead, Jason. One more, then we have a hand here in the audience.
Sure. And then Twitter user Rachel is asking, are we working with public transit to move travelers safely to and from prime viewing locations?
We are in touch with transit properties, but they only go so far in their jurisdiction. So places like Nashville, there's already good infrastructure in place for transit. You talk about the Park Service, if there's anything special that you're doing there. For long haul, it would be getting the information out to the motor coaches to help make sure that they're prepared.
Yeah, in terms of national parks with mass transit, as you're aware, most of our sites along a specific trajectory are fairly remote, and there may be service providers doing that in terms of helping people to get there, but in terms of actual effort by the Park Service, we're not providing anything specifically.
Okay, we're going to come back, and you have the mic, but we also have some social media folks here in the audience. So if you guys want to ask questions, I'm going to see if we want to come to you next. But go ahead, name and affiliation, please.
Janet Heaton with NASA Social.
Oh, there we go. Thank
you got us. I have a question from a Twitter follower, Michelle, asking, for the International Space Station, what will they observe from the space station, and what can they expect to see?
Well, that's a very good question. We are still evaluating what that will be, so stay tuned. We want to get out early. We're 2 months out. Well, we're going to have a better picture of the International Space Station with more specifics probably about 2 weeks before the eclipse. So stay tuned. We'll get that out to you as soon as possible. Okay. Any social media here? We got a hand here. Let's go. Hold hand up high. Please identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Jen Hallwell with Go Beyond. So one of my followers, Andrew, wants to know, given the recent wave of sort of anti-science sentiment that we're seeing across the U.S., how is NASA focusing its outreach efforts to get people more excited about science? Is this eclipse part of that? Is that something you guys can comment on, or do we have to keep it about the eclipse?
No, we'll keep it about life. That's good. So working at one of the most exciting science organizations in the world, at NASA, we feel that it's absolutely critical to keep talking about science and the impact that science has. Science not only changes what we know, but sometimes changes entirely how we think about life itself. And the kind of how I started today talking about really where we're at in the world is one of those vantage points. Also, we keep repeating and really want to show tangible examples to show how science protects and improves lives. The kind of work that you do, Vanessa, NOAA, that really predicts these storms, it's all truly a benefit of science investments over many, many years that now save lives today. We have these cameras out there that in fact work and do the kind of amazing, get the amazing data that we use every day, not just to figure out how we dress, but to get out of the way of harm. And so for us, really talking about the benefits of science that every one of us has is one of the ways we address the kind of worry that is being expressed.
And again, for the 2:30 with the scientists, you hear some interesting perspective from them, so keep that in mind. So Seth, I'm going to come back to you, and then we're going to begin wrapping up. Can we get Seth another mic? And if there are any other hands after Seth, I'll go one more social to Jason, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you. Seth Borenstein again at AP. For Vanessa, given that for the weather for an eclipse eclipse watchers are especially not just looking at, is it partly cloudy, mostly sunny. They're looking for far more specifics, and they're looking 2 or 3 days in advance so that they can chase an eclipse, chase the good weather. What kind of, is NOAA going to be doing anything special in terms of resources and eclipse forecasts, and changing, a forecast that's more aimed at, here is the sky coverage you're going to get, and especially 2 days in advance when you need it more?
Sure. I pointed out we have a number of websites that we'll be posting information about, including Weather Service sites, talking about the weather during the eclipse. And I just want to remind everybody that, while 2 months out we can say, from historical record where the clouds tend to be, we clearly don't know yet on August 21st where the clouds will be. So definitely stay tuned to your local weather forecast and the Weather Service forecast, and use they will have tools. They'll have, I'm sure, plenty of information out a few days ahead so you can make decisions on where you might want to plan your visit if you have choices of where to go to look, to view.
Vanessa, I said October 2. You must be a football fan like me.
So.
Will there be a special eclipse website at NOAA just for weather watchers? As I know there are places like people like Jay Anderson.
I'm not quite sure what content they're planning for those websites yet, because I think it's still in work, but we will get back with you and let you know.
And finally, you mentioned Discover satellite.
Yes.
How crucial is it, especially given that it is being slated for being killed off by this administration?
Oh, the Discover satellite's not being turned off. The Discover satellite's used in operations daily to monitor the sun's output and to provide us the weather warnings of space weather. What you're talking about is the EPIC camera and the money to operate the EPIC camera, which is the one that looks back at the Earth. But the Discover satellite itself is in operations and will remain so.
Okay, Jason, let's take us home with one more question and we'll wrap up.
Sure. So Twitter user Glad You Know is asking, what time will this eclipse begin?
You got the time?
I don't have it right committed to memory. It's
10:40. Will you give him identify yourself, please?
Hi, this is Alex Young from Goddard Space Flight Center. So on the West Coast, it's going to get to Oregon at about 10:15 a.m. local time, and actually ends in South Carolina around 2:45 p.m. local time. And it takes an hour and a half to get across the country. And if you go to eclipse2017.nasa.gov, we have an interactive Google map. You can click on any point in the United States and find out all the specifics of timing.
Excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap up here. Now, again, don't change that dial. We're going to take a brief intermission with some safety videos and other Eclipse content. We'll come back here at 2:30 with scientists. You really don't want to miss this discussion. I want to thank our host, the Newseum, our panel, all of the organizations here, and the fact that we are getting ready. We're 2 months out. We're still going to be updating all of the websites that you've heard. Go to nasa.gov/Eclipse Live. Remember that for the live show. Hashtag Eclipse 2017. And we're going to do one last thing, and I need audience participation. We talked about safety, safety, safety. Get those glasses. Get ready for the eclipse. We will be August 21. We're prepared. We'll see you at 2:30.